Right, hello, welcome back to Spotlight. I'm here with an amazing talent who I've actually had the privilege of directing. Please let me introduce to you the amazing Brendan Meyer. Hey!
Hey, hello. Thanks for having me on, Brendan.
No. Brendan, yeah, that's confusing. So let's time travel. Let's do a bit of time traveling to start with. Let's go back in time to when you decided that you were going to be an actor, and let's get the CV right here. You kind of started around about 2005 with the Waking Up Wally thing, or was it a bit earlier than that?
No, I mean, that's where I started doing it in any kind of professional capacity. So I had an agent. I'm from Alberta in Canada, in Edmonton. So I did get an agent there around 2004. And then, I got my first ever film and television gig in 2005. But I've been doing a lot of theater classes and stuff all since I was a little kid. I was always really, really interested in acting. I can barely remember really deciding to be an actor. I was always interested in doing it. I was homeschooled, but most of the time in the summer I would do it would always be an acting summer camp that I would do, or an acting class on the weekends or something.
So actually that's interesting. You mentioned there about you getting an agent quite early on, which of course is something that a lot of people really struggle to do, to get an agent. So how did you get an agent? What was that procedure like?
It's always about working your way up the sort of ladder in terms of, what kind of stuff you have to offer an agency, what kind of people you've worked with that they can, you use as a reference and things like that. So how I got my first agent was in Edmonton. I just did an acting class, and, someone from the acting class there, I think that was the first ever kind of film and TV thing I did, recommended me to an agent. And so that kind of progression. And then the Vancouver agent was an actor on Dino Sapien, was like, oh, you want to work in Vancouver too? You should be with my agency. And then that's kind of how it was in the US as well. And that, like, I had a couple different meetings, and then I had a friend who said, oh, you should meet my agent. So, they still have to want you too. But I wish I had I wish there was a more quantifiable, plan of attack, but so often it's just sort of having the desire and trying to pursue it, and hoping it all falls into place. But I kind of think that's true for most people I've talked to.
How much does luck play? How much of a role does luck play in the actor's life?
There's a tremendous amount of luck. And I think the only thing that you can sort of, that you can kind of actually do is just having a sense of drive, a sense of passion, and not get discouraged. I think that's probably the biggest thing that doesn't have anything to do with luck, is because getting parts has to do with luck, getting an agent has to do with luck, whether or not the parts you even get. That's the thing about acting. You could actually book something and then have it not come out, or, not go anywhere. So I always think that the two things that you can control are kind of not getting discouraged, which is going to open yourself up to more opportunities, right? Because not only are you not going to give up, but you're going to stay more engaged. You're not ever going to not have the energy or not have the drive to take advantage of an opportunity. And then I guess just how much you appreciate the opportunities that you do get, which will hopefully make you easier to work with, and all those other things.
Fast forwarding a couple of years, when you did, would you say Dino Sapien was your first gig where it was regular acting for quite a long time? Because I don't know how many episodes you were in of Dino, presumably all of them, but was that the sort of first sort of major series you'd done?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dino Sapien, I think I did wind up being at least in every episode somewhat. So yeah, that was the first film and TV. And actually, I think that was probably the most consistent acting thing I've done, because even some of the theater stuff I did in Edmonton came afterwards. So I think my experience pre-Dino Sapien was maybe 6 days on set over 2 small TV movies here.
And what are your memories of Dino Sapien?
I remember the people very, very vividly. I remember the locations very, very vividly. And I just remember having such a fun time. That one is just, it was all so new, and just getting to be around all these new, different people. What was fascinating too is there were so many people from overseas, and many of my family are from over there. So to connect with so many people from overseas as well, like yourself and the actors like James Coombs and Susanna. And it was just really, really, really fun.
I suppose you could say you really hit the big time with Mr. Young.
So in the audition, so how an audition will usually work, right, is it can sometimes be the night before, which sucks, but hopefully a couple of days beforehand, you will be sent the sides, right? You'll be sent which are scenes. So you'll get a scene from the show you're auditioning for. I mean, sometimes if it's a bigger project or a project they're trying to keep secret, you'll get a fake scene or a scene from another movie, or something that is you don't know what you're supposed to do. But most of the time, probably like at least like 85-90% of the time, you're getting a scene from the actual movie that you're going to be working on, that showcases whatever that they want to see, right? Whether it's a big emotional moment, whether it's a key scene, if it's a romantic film, maybe it's a flirtatious scene with you in the romantic lead or something like that. If it's comedy, it might be something that requires a fast pace. And so for Mr. Young, I think they sent 3 different scenes from the pilot script, which was, I think one was sort of like the big climax of the episode, and one was like an early scene with the sister. And so I went in and read with the casting director, and then I got brought back. And so within the span of like maybe a month of hearing about it, I was now in the final 3. I think it was either the final 3 or 4 for this thing. Wow. So it was very weird to sort of wrap my head around, because, it was really wild, because I'd spent all summer wondering if I was going to be doing this multi-camera sitcom show in LA. And then all of a sudden I was now auditioning for this thing. And yeah, I went into the room, and I think it was the creator and the 2 executive producers. And so it was just 3 people. So it actually wasn't too intimidating. I remember for the Nickelodeon pilot, I think maybe this helped me in that I'd just gone through that process earlier in the year. I remember the Nickelodeon, the final Nickelodeon test, it was like maybe like 15 people. 15, 20 people in a room at the end. Yeah, on a long, long table. And the nice thing was, this is right at the end of the process. So you were kind of doing scenes that you'd already done a bunch of times. So at least you sort of were hopefully in like a second nature kind of thing. But I'll never forget that experience of doing that Nickelodeon thing. Because, they'd send people home in the middle of the thing. I mean, you felt like you were on American Idol. They'd be like, okay, you 3 come back in, you 2, thank you for your time. And you think, well, that's probably, it was scary. But but Mr. Young was a little more intimate. It was a little bit easier as far as the intimidation factor. I mean, it's always nerve-wracking to do an audition no matter what. But so it was the 3 guys and the casting director. And yeah, we did the read. And I don't have a ton of specific memories actually of the read, but it went pretty well, obviously, and it felt like it had gone well. But I don't remember it going like spectacular. I just remember it going really, really well. And we had actually had to come out to Vancouver because we were still in Alberta. So we were in a hotel, and we got a phone call like that night. And it was like, okay, so you're going to be reading now with all the other actors that we have narrowed down for all the other series regular roles. And so we assumed that meant I got the part, but it was sort of vague.
Yeah,
and
it's a bit vague, yeah.
It was vague. I don't actually know why, because when I got there the next day, it was pretty obvious that I was the guy that they had chosen, but I don't know. It was sort of vague at the beginning. And of course, You're always sort of like, as an actor, like, whenever I book a part, I spend,
you're playing the lead.
Yeah, it would have been nice, but it was obvious once I got there, I guess. Though, of course, it's so funny the way this happens as an actor. This always happens to me, and I almost feel bad because it doesn't come from being self-absorbed. It comes from being paranoid. But anytime I have to chemistry read with other actors, I just always still feel like I'm auditioning. You know what I mean? Like I always get so paranoid that they're spending the whole time going, "Oh, this guy, this is a disaster. We got to pull the plug now. We have to get rid of him." When in fact I'm supposed to be there for other people who are auditioning. I'm just chemistry reading with them. So a couple days. This is literally only like 2 days after I did my audition on my own. I went and read with like everybody that they had for like all the roles on Mr. Young. So they had the bully, they had my sister, they had my best friend, they had, all these different people. And so that was kind of a really wild experience. And it was kind of fun because a lot of the first time that I got to meet the actors that I wound up spending 2.5 kind of, years with, I met them for the first time in the audition room. And it's funny how it works in that I think the people that I connected with the most in the audition room or in the waiting room talking mostly wound up getting the parts, which is weird because they didn't ask me a lot of questions about who I wanted or anything like that.
Right.
So it was kind of cool. It was really wild. And actually there was a great story of one of the actors, Kurt. He was the only one where they offered it to him in the room.
Oh, really?
And, yeah. I guess he was so far and away their choice. And he did great in the room with me. And he went in, it was so fun. He was 18. and he was in there, and he's this big guy, but he's a really sweet dude. Like, and they were just like, "So you want to do it?" And he was like, "Oh my God!" And like that was actually really fun to be in the room, because as an actor, you're almost never in the room when another person gets the part. So it was so cool. And we come out, and he's like, "I guess I'll see you in a few months, man. Oh, this is awesome!" He was so excited that he had got this part. So then after that, it all kind of fell into place, and I wound up having to move to Vancouver.
With the process of shooting comedy, where the executive producers kind of looking, certainly when we do comedy over here, they're certainly looking at the audience, and they've got this gag lined up, and if the audience don't laugh, I know over here they'd be like, "Stop, right, something's wrong here, let's go back." And was that the way it worked?
Yeah, totally. They would do that. Absolutely. Especially on a live show day, the way they did it. I think it's probably similar to how you guys do it over there and how they do it in the US. But they, we'd come in on a Tuesday usually, and we would start with table reading next week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would table read that episode, and they would, you'd either get laughs at the table read or you wouldn't, and they'd go and they'd rewrite it. And then Wednesday and Tuesday, we would spend the whole time rehearsing the script from the last week that we're doing this week. And then we would do a run through for the producers the first day. And how it works in the States, we didn't really have a huge network presence on this show in Canada. So it really was sort of like 2 producer run throughs where they could sharpen it. But when I've worked on, I one time, worked on a multi-camera sitcom show in the States. I did an episode of a show called Best Friends Whenever, which was a Disney Channel show. That was a lot more intensive process, because you come in on a Monday, you do rehearsal, you come in on a Tuesday, you'd rehearse it for the writers, but then on Wednesday, the network would come in and they would kind of oversee it. Actually, even one actor got swapped out after the network.
No.
I know. I know. It was scary. I mean, that was another example where like I said, I was just doing a guest star role in this thing, and I went in, and the network came, and I remember there were some classroom scenes that I had at the beginning, and I remember looking over at them and feeling like there was something off, like just feeling like there was an energy there. And I thought, oh man. And of course, as being an actor and being in a parental position, I made it about me. And I was like, oh man, I don't know. And I thought, you're being silly, you're fine, but I guess there was the other guy in that scene who was a guest star was the teacher, and he was the one replaced. So obviously I did pick up on something that was going on. It just, thankfully for me, was not about me and specifically, but yeah. So that was a lot more intensive. Whereas Mr. Young, you would have Tuesday and Wednesday rehearsals, but it was just for the writers. So you would still get a lot of notes, and there would still be a lot of changes, but there was just really one kind of tier of command.
Were you aware, did you know that it was coming to an end at the end of series 3?
We were in that weird area for about 2 months where we weren't sure if it was going to come back for a full 4th season or whatever. And then they just brought us back for 5. So we got to finish in the spring 5 episodes, and we got to write a proper finale and all that different stuff. So it actually turned out to be kind of great in that we got kind of 5 episodes knowing it was the end to sort of savor the whole experience. And so we did know, which was nice.
Then we move a few years forward in time, and your next sort of major series was, the Fear the Walking Dead thing. So tell us about playing Jake Powell in Fear the Walking Dead.
But it was really cool. There's this studio somewhere in LA that has like a fake airplane hangar, and it was cool because when you're filming on a plane, it wasn't like a half set or anything like that. It was a full like encased plane. I believe just the rows were a little bit longer, so the camera could fit in, and so it just felt like a kind of wider plane. So that was really, really fun because it was a place where I think they did like the Pan Am experience there sometimes too or something. This studio had something where you could go and feel like you were on Pan Am in the old days or whatever. But so they had those kinds of planes, and so that was really, really exciting. And I think originally there was some talk that it was going to spin off I did one episode of Fear the Walking Dead off that, but this was around the same time that I got the show, The OA. So I wound up actually getting locked into that before I knew for sure whether there was going to be more with the real Fear the Walking Dead full show. But I still got to do one episode, which was one of the more fun experiences I've done, actually, because it was filmed at this Baja Studios in Mexico, which is James Cameron, the studios James Cameron used for Titanic. So all these water tanks, and which was really cool. And they'd filmed, I think they filmed Master and Commander there. and they had filmed that movie All Is Lost with Robert Redford, where he was alone on the boat. But that was a really fun experience because that's probably the most kind of elaborate thing I've ever worked on in terms of like a water scene. Like it was a full-on water tank, and there was a scene where I was clinging on to wreckage, in the water and getting, so that was awesome. I had a blast with that. And I had to do a really intense prosthetic makeup too. That was the first time that I had ever done a full face cast, which for people who don't know, it's quite intense actually. You go in and you're usually in this room and they submerge your face, and I guess it's a molding paste of some kind.
Yeah.
And they completely submerge your face, and you can't see, and you can only hear a little bit, and you can't talk, and they just brush as the mold goes over to plug your nose. They brush it away, which is not a great experience as you realize that the only thing between you and a sort of buried alive, molded alive death is some guy wiping it away. But of course, all these people are professionals, so you feel 100% safe. But it is a wild experience because you have to go in and do this full face cast. And what's funny is only for half my face, the burn, but they need your whole face. And the nice thing about that, for people who don't know, is that the reason why they do that is so they can mold the makeup to your face, so it's actually more comfortable.
The OA. So this is TV series that hit Netflix around 2019. It was perhaps a lot more for you, much more grown up in terms of TV series. Here's I've seen all of it, and I was quite taken aback that they didn't renew it for the third season because they left that on such a cliffhanger. But but tell us about your experience working on the OA. You played Jesse in that, didn't you? You were Jesse, yeah. So tell us about, and from the very first episode, you were there watching that poor woman get mauled by a dog, and then suddenly she's fine.
And I got the part in October, which was in about October of 2015, I guess, and we filmed the first season in New York City. So we were actually in New York City. Most of the more fantastical stuff was built on sets in New York. And then most of the town that the boys live in, the house where Britt gets attacked by the dog, all that stuff was they found an area in upstate New York, probably like an hour and a half out of Manhattan, maybe a little longer. And they found this whole housing development complex, and a lot of the houses no one had moved in. So they had a lot of empty houses they could just use. And that's one of the big reasons why they went New York over like LA or something, is they just kind of found this great, it almost felt like a studio backlot because it was I think that for whatever reason, they hadn't started moving people in or things had fallen through, but they essentially had a whole neighborhood.
So now, of course, we're coming up to present day. Now, of course, you're making your own short films, directing your own actors, now being the other side of the camera, which I guess is easier when you've had a lot of experience like you, because you've watched a lot of directors work and you've watched a lot of camera shots and you know how the thing works and you've started going into the language of television. Tell us about your shorts, what you have made, and why you're sort of starting to dabble on the other side of the camera.
So, the first ever short I did was called A Job, which was sort of about a hitman and a day in his life. And I actually did that right at the tail end of Mr. Young. So I got really fortunate in that most of the crew of Mr. Young said, hey, we'll help you out with this. So it was actually a really, really great crew and a lot of people I've worked with before. But then, and I meant to do more directing after that. And then basically right after that was when I sort of started working more in the States and made the move down there, and just acting kind of pulled me away again. But in the last year, so just this fall here in Alberta, actually, I directed a short called Home Again, which a friend of mine, Emily McCourt, who's an actress in Toronto, had brought me onto. And it was really fun because the script was based off a short play that one of my best friends, Calla Wright from Edmonton, like one of my childhood best friends, had written. And Emily was a friend of mine as well from childhood. So that was really fun. So we got a great crew. We went out to Drumheller, which around where we shot Dino Sapien, actually. I don't think I ever shot in Drumheller for Dino Sapien, but it was close to, and they did shoot quite a bit of it. I think the last week or whatever was in Drumheller. So we found this great little spot, and it was about these two friends from high school sort of reconnecting after not seeing each other for a lot of years. And it was really, really fun. Shot for 3 days, and it was very, very intense, and it was great. It was like we had like, I think, a 22-page script we had to shoot in like 3 days, so it was very, it was a lot. It was very, very intense, but it was funny. The short was brought to me, and so the script was written in such a way that you really couldn't chop it up too much. I did a lot of work to sort of make the individual scenes shorter, so you weren't like, in one scene, which was kind of a fun process.
What's next for Brendan Meyer?
I did this movie called Color Out of Space. That was the last thing that I did, actually, with Nicolas Cage and Jolie Richardson, actually. And so I'd just done that had just come out. So that's out now, and it came out in January in theaters and on VOD and stuff. And I hadn't lined up the next thing right for the beginning of the year. And then, of course, all of this happened. So I have one thing called Unfollowed, which is another kind of a horror film from the people who did Searching and Unfriended, those shorts. Sorry, not those shorts, those features, those horrors. And so that's probably the next thing that I'm in that will potentially come out at some point. I still don't know when that's going to come out, but that will probably be the next thing. But yeah, between that, other than that, and just working on these shorts, because of lockdown, I don't know. I'll have to get back to it in a couple of months here.
Well, Brendan, thank you very much for being a part of Spotlight.
Yeah, no, thanks.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you, Brendan. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you. So next time we're going to be talking to production manager Sally Gamgee on the show. Join us. Please subscribe and join us on Twitter and TikTok at Spotlight 1701, and we'll see you next time.